Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome back to Indonesia Pavilion. I hope everybody have a good break, feeling great and ready to join in our session. Today we'll be talking about our stronger commitment on new renewable energy, and I'll kick off by inviting the director of PT Kayan Hydropower Nusantara, Mr. Andi Mariono, who will serve as the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Desmona. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us. So, my name is Andi Marjono. I'm the director of PT Kayan Hydropower Nusantara, as well as head of hydropower at Adaro Clean Energy. And today, we're going to talk about renewable energy role in green mineral downstream industries. Just wanted to give you some context. The government of Indonesia is committed to developing the downstream processing minerals, especially by developing, the green industrial park through what's so-called renewable energy-based industrial development, or REBIT. And when we look at the number, the objective is to enhance the export of top three minerals, namely aluminum, nickel, and copper. We look at the statistic reported by CLSA. Indonesia was part of Fragile Five in 2013-2014, following the end of commodity boom. But then there is a nickel downstream industrialization, and after that we saw the value added from nickel from 1 billion USD in 2014 to 34 billion in 2022. So it's quite big jump, right? And also the downstream sector pushed the FDI, foreign direct investment, from 1% in 2018 to 1.9% in 2022 until this year, right? So private developers is also playing important roles. And today we're going to have Nickel Industry Limited smelter in Morowali, Sulawesi. Also, we're going to have KIPI, Kalimantan Industrial Park Indonesia in North Kalimantan, which is going to be powered by hydropower in Mentarang Induk. And then we will also see that Mentarang Indo is being developed, and right now it's something that we will see that it's going to be one of the biggest in the country, and also it's going to be comply with international standard as well. And that's why we also invite Pak Antonio Lesmana to be here. And then last but not least, we invite Debbie Gray, which is the IHA, International Hydropower Association, to speak about, the why hydro will play a very crucial role. As you see here, the objective or the topic of today is basically what are the strategic roles and challenges of renewable energy, especially hydropower and energy mix, to power the mineral downstream industry and accelerate Indonesia energy transition agenda. First of all, I'd like to invite the first speaker, Pak Mutasar, to come on the stage. Please have a seat, Pak. Pak Mutasar is Sustainability Manager of Nickel Downstream Industry. And second speaker is Pak Antonio Lesmana from Kayan Hydropower Nusantara, President Director. And the last one will be Debbie Gray, Interim Head of Policy, International Hydropower Association. Let's give a round of big applause to all of them. And later on, during the closing remarks, we're going to invite Pak Rahmat Kaimuddin, which is the Deputy Minister of, Coordinating Ministry of Maritime and Investment. So first of all, I'd like to invite Pak Mutasar to speak about, your transitioning to renewable energy and other lower carbon emitting solutions in your smelter industry in Sulawesi. Stage is yours, Pak. Please. Let's give a round of big applause to Pak Mutasar.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, speakers, and also ladies and gentlemen here. My name is Muhtazar. I'm a Sustainability Manager of Nickel Industries Limited. And today we are going to present about our experience on how renewable energy can help us in decarbonizing our operations. as well as to share some success stories in the downstreaming process. Yeah. So, yeah, again, a little bit about myself. I have a background in environmental engineering and also environmental science, and have worked for various industries since 2014. And yeah, later, if you have any question that you want to address that cannot be raised here, you can also send me an email there. And about Nickel Industries Limited. So Nickel Industries Limited administratively is an Australian public company. So we are listed in the Australia Securities Exchange, or ASX, since 2018. But all of our assets, our operations are located in Indonesia. So we have a nickel mining site, which is called as Hengjaya Mine in Morowali, Central Sulawesi. And we have 4 nickel refinery facilities or smelters. 3 of them are located in the IMIP, or Indonesia Morowali Industrial Park. And 1 of them is located in the Weda Bay, North Maluku, or what we know as the Indonesia Weda Bay Industrial Park, or IWIP. And since its listing in the ASX in 2018, or more or less 5 years ago, Nickel Industries Limited has grown from a relatively small nickel mining company to the top 10 nickel producers globally. And we don't want to stop there. We aspire to become global leaders in low-cost and sustainable nickel production by implementing the best industrial standard and also supporting the communities in our areas of operations. And a little bit about Indonesia downstreaming policy. I believe it will be explained later by the representative from the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Investment. But just to give a little bit of context, so since the nickel export ban, I think, was enacted in 2020, it has attracted various investment, both come from domestic and also from foreign investment. And in 2021 alone, as you can see on the screen, the nickel production in Indonesia is higher than the rest of the world combined. So it's something that we should be very proud about. And here, I think the investment is not just in the upstream or in the mining sites, but also in the middle stream, in the processing, or even in the downstream, to make nickel to become a useful product such as batteries and etc. And in terms of timeline here, I think I will not go into the details, but as you can see again on the chart here, I think since 2020 we can see that there are a lot of companies who have invested in Indonesia, both from the ASEAN or China and also from the Western countries here. So yeah, I think from our point of view, this is the downstreaming policy is also one of the most successful one, I think, in developing the national nickel production and also to support the economic growth. And yeah, I think we are also proud with our Hengjaya mine. It is our mine site that located in the Morowali, Central Sulawesi. And please allow us to play a short video about it.
Nickel Industries' 80% owned Hengjaya nickel mine, located in Indonesia's central Sulawesi region, is a world-class 5,983 hectare nickel laterite mine close to the Indonesian Morowali Industrial Park, which is the world's largest fully vertically integrated nickel processing and stainless steel park, producing a broad suite of nickel products including nickel pig iron, nickel matte, mixed hydroxide precipitate and nickel cathode. Hengjaya is a large tonnage, high-grade, long-life mine with a 20-year mine production licence and 2 further 10-year extensions. The mine produces high-quality nickel saprolite and limonite ore, two forms of ore in high demand as they serve as vital feedstock for Indonesia's world-scale RKEF and HPAL operations. Our Hengjaya mine operations are a leader in sustainable and responsible mining, having been awarded the coveted Green Proper rating, one of only two nickel mines in Indonesia to receive this rating. We have also received the highest MSCI rating for any Indonesian mining and metals company and rank in the top third percentile on the S&P Global Sustainability Index. Our core ESG pillars are focused on local community, employment, empowerment and development, achieved through a number of programs including education, health, waste management, women's empowerment and adoption of renewable energy. Hengjaya Mine is committed to comprehensive biodiversity and rehabilitation programs, which since 2019 have seen it remediate over 2,000 hectares of land by planting over 2 million trees that will provide a significant future income stream for the local communities. Nickel Industries 80% owned.
Yes, and so our sustainability strategy focuses on the three pillars, which are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have initiatives that aim to develop the economic of the community and also our operational areas. And we also want to empower the social people around our sites through various our social responsibility programs. And we also want to help to preserve the environment through our environmental stewardship. And more importantly, I think aligned with the spirit of the UN Climate Conference, we want also to reduce our carbon footprint by transforming our business. So we started with using the RKEF technology, which is quite energy intensive. And now we move toward the HPAL technology, which is less carbon intensive. And we also aim to utilize or optimize the availability of renewable energy sources, I think, in our operational areas. So later I will explain that we have developed the solar power system. And we also currently are studying about the potential of hydropower in powering our operations as well. And here I think in line with the conference, the COP28, we are also delighted, I think, to announce our commitment to reduce half of our carbon intensity by 2035 and also to achieve net zero by 2050. So it takes, I think, a couple of years for us to consider to have a robust study, and we decided, I think, to announce it now because we believe achieving net zero is feasible and also economically profitable. So yeah, that's our commitment, despite being a relatively young company, but we have a big ambition, and we hope to support Indonesia to achieve its carbon neutral target in 2060, as well as to help the world achieve its climate target by 2050. And we have several environmental initiatives. So in terms of energy, we have implemented solar system at our Hengjaya mine, which is able to power our office operations in the daytime. And we also consider or study the possibility to use LNG in our operation as an alternative. And later I will explain about the solar power agreement. And in terms of water conservation, I think we installed the continuous effluent monitoring system in our mine site. So we ensure that the effluent will not exceed the limit set by the government. And last but not least is the biodiversity protection. So we are proud to support the rehabilitation of watershed area in Central Sulawesi, in which we have planted more than 2 million trees since 2019 in the area of 1,905 hectares. And these plantations also will help the local communities because it will become the source of income, I think, after the 8 years of plantation. And yeah, again, just to give a visualization, I think, on where we are right now. So again, Nickel Industries Limited is a young company. So we were incorporated in 2007 in New South Wales, Australia. But yeah, since we are listed in 2018 and now we are already become one of the 10 largest nickel producer globally, outpacing some of the biggest companies who have been around for decades, such as the BHP, Glencore, and others. So yeah, we are very proud of this tremendous achievement and expect to grow even more in the future. And yeah, like I said earlier, I think since we are committed to reduce our emission, to halve it by 2035, and also to achieve net zero in 2050, so it is not possible to continue our business as usual. So we start to transition to use the lower carbon intensive footprint, and we choose to invest in the HPAL technology, which is the third generation of HPAL technology, which is expected to be able to produce nickel with the carbon intensity of less than 10 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of nickel metal equivalent. So this is very low and very efficient. And besides of that, we also utilize the heat in our operations and use the bio-based fuel, because the bio-based fuel is having lower carbon intensity in comparison with the conventional diesel fuel. And this is something that we just recently announced it as well. So Nickel Industries work together with Cessna, an Indonesian solar provider company, to develop the largest solar power plant in Indonesia with a capacity of 200 megawatts peak. And we have signed the MOU last month and announced it to the public and expect this to run by 2025. And moving to the social aspect, so we try to avoid reactive investment and believe that social initiatives are social investment. And we focus on several aspects such as education, health, infrastructure. And we are also developing corporate foundations that will help us to provide scholarship for indigenous students in Morowali area. So we hope that these students in the future can also become part of our workforce. And in terms of governance, we have published our code of conduct and anti-bribery and corruption policy. And we also have assessed our operations against the human rights standards and also the modern slavery standard, especially for the ones that are set in Australia. And we provide equal opportunity to male and female employees, so they won't be paid differently if they are on the same positions, or in other words, we provide equal remuneration for all of our employees. And we are also pleased to be named as one of the only 2 nickel companies last year in 2022 that earned Green Proper rating from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. And also this year we were nominated for the Green Proper candidate, in which the result will be announced by the end of December this year. Besides of that, we also receive various accolades in the national and international level. So just to mention some, so we received the Most Promising Transition Award during the ESG World Summit in Bangkok in June this year. And we were also nominated as the most sustainable nickel company by TransAsia in August 2023. And yeah, last but not least, again, the ratings, the awards are not our main objective, but I think they can provide like some assurance from the independent parties about our performance, and here we are proud that our company have received, I think, good rating from the S&P Global, MSCI, and also various nominations from the Asia Sustainability Reporting Rating Award, and also being a finalist for the Asia Sustainability Reporting Award in 2022. And yeah, if you are interested to know more about our ESG performance, you can also download our sustainability report. So we have published the 2021 and 2022 sustainability reports in accordance with the GRI standard, and those publications are available in our corporate website. That's all from us, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Muhtasar. Big applause to Muhtasar. So it's quite exciting to see your effort in reducing the carbon footprint, not only on the downstream part, but also you introducing your flagship project, which is the 200 megawatt peak of solar PV, and you are saying that you develop hydro as well. So we hope it's going to be realized quite soon. I forgot to mention that Pak Muhtasar received an SDG Pioneer Award from the United Nations Global Compact, becoming only the second Indonesian in the awards history to receive this accolade. So it's quite remarkable.
Thank you, Pak.
Big applause for Pak Muhtasar. So we have seen now from the downstream part. Now I'm gonna invite Pak Antony Lesmana, the director, president director of Kayan Hydropower Nusantara. We're moving to the upstream side. This is a development of 1.4 gigawatt of hydropower in Mali now. Just would like to introduce yourself, Pak Antony. Pak Antony is the CEO of PT Kayan Hydropower Nusantara. He is also the director of PT Kayan Patria Pratama, an established conglomerate with 40 years of operation across industries in East and North Kalimantan. With almost 2 decades of directorship in energy sector, Antony and his management team are the leading catch and in developing Indonesia's first large-scale hydropower, 1.375 gigawatt in Kalimantan. So I'd like to hear from you, Pak Antony, how to develop this sustainable hydropower project while supporting the rapid, renewable energy-based industrial development program set by the government. Time is yours. Please give a round of big applause to Pak Antony.
Okay, thank you, Pak Andi. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome. And I'm grateful to see so many of you here today, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this beautiful city of Dubai, famous for its pristine beaches and soaring skyscraper. Today, the topic of my presentation is on the strategic role of hydropower in the energy mix to power mineral downstreaming in industry. Okay, so my name is Antony Lesmana, and I'm the President Director of PT Kayan Hydropower Nusantara from Indonesia. PT KSN is a joint venture between Adaro Energi Indonesia, who is the largest integrated energy company in Indonesia, Sarawak Energi Berhad, a vertically integrated power utility company fully owned by the government of Sarawak. And now they have developed and operated 3 large hydro dams in Sarawak. And last but not least, PT Kayan Patria Pratama, a local company who has more than 40 years experience working in North and East Kalimantan. So as a company, PT KSN is now trying to progress its vision of becoming Indonesia's sustainable champion, starting with the development of Mentarang Induk Hydroelectric Project, Indonesia's first large-scale sustainable hydropower development. So, I don't think that. Oh, video, okay. So here is a short video of PT KSN. Okay.
Lompatan transformasi ekonomi Indonesia dan dimulai dari sini. Sehingga kita bisa mengelola sumber daya alam kita dari hulu sampai ke hilir. Dan yang paling penting, penciptaan lapangan pekerjaan yang sangat besar.
Indonesia dikenal dengan keindahan dan sumber daya alamnya beserta potensi-potensi yang akan menjadi sumber daya terbarukan. Sebagai bentuk nyata upaya pemerintah Republik Indonesia dalam mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca, Kalimantan Industrial Park Indonesia telah dibangun dan dikembangkan. Sungai Mentarang yang terletak di Kabupaten Malinau, Kalimantan Utara akan menjadi potensi pembangkit listrik tenaga air yang akan dibangun oleh PT Kayan Hydropower Nusantara yang akan mendukung kawasan industri hijau Indonesia. PLTA Mentarang Induk 1.375 MW yang merupakan PLTA terbesar di Indonesia yang menjadi salah satu bendungan CFRD tertinggi di dunia dengan tinggi 235 meter dan panjang 815 meter yang dapat menyediakan sumber energi hijau yang ramah lingkungan bagi Indonesia. PT Kayan Hydropower Nusantara berkomitmen terhadap pembangunan PLTA yang bertanggung jawab dan berkelanjutan sesuai dengan hukum dan peraturan di Indonesia serta praktek terbaik internasional berdasarkan International Hydropower Association atau IHA. Pembangunan ini akan menciptakan lapangan pekerjaan baru bagi masyarakat dan menciptakan peluang-peluang usaha yang beragam bagi masyarakat sekitar. PT Kayan Hydropower Nusantara melaksanakan tanggung jawab lingkungan dan sosial melalui program Lestari Corporate Social and Environment Responsibility atau CSER yang difokuskan dalam 4 kegiatan: Lestari Kehidupan, Lestari Lingkungan, Lestari Budaya, dan Lestari Pendidikan. Salah satu program Lestari Kehidupan berupa pemberian fasilitas perumahan baru dan lahan pertanian bagi warga yang direlokasi demi meningkatkan kualitas hidup masyarakat. Dengan adanya pembangunan PLTA ini akan membawa peran yang besar terhadap ekonomi Indonesia, di antaranya mendorong masuknya investasi dari dalam dan luar negeri dengan perkiraan nilai investasi sekitar 2,6 miliar US dollar yang dapat meningkatkan pertumbuhan ekonomi daerah. Merah sebagai semangat dan putih sebagai tekad yang menjadikan Indonesia sebagai bangsa yang mampu membawa perubahan besar bagi lingkungan dan juga dunia. Indonesia tangguh, Indonesia tumbuh.
Okay, so as a background, Indonesia has an enormous renewable energy potential enough for it to power its sustainable growth. However, despite its enormous potential, if we combine the current geothermal, hydropower, solar, and wind, current renewable energy mix in Indonesia is only about 12.3% out of the 23% renewable energy target. In many of his presidential speech, Bapak Jokowi always mentioned that Indonesia has approximately 80 gigawatt of hydropower potential across 4,000 rivers, and 38 gigawatt of those is believed to be able to be developed economically. So if we can harness this potential sustainably, I believe that it can help Indonesia to achieve its renewable energy target, which is the 23% of energy mix in 2025 and net zero emissions in 2060. For those of you who have not followed the development of Indonesia closely, under the leadership of Bapak Jokowi and Coordinating Minister of Maritime and Investment, Bapak Luhut Binsar Panjaitan, Indonesia have seen successful story of industrial park. One being Morowali Industrial Park, and second being Wedabe Industrial Park. This industrial park integrated industrial park for nickel smelting, producing components of electric vehicle battery. So many believe that downstreaming industry is the crucial step for Indonesia to become a developed country by 2045. Then with the same concept, one of our shareholder, PT Adaro Energy, has decided to build the first green industrial park in Indonesia. It's not only the first, it will be probably the largest green industrial park in Indonesia, if not the whole world. So by pushing the concept of renewable energy-based industrial development, we hope we can accelerate the development and utilization of renewable energy, especially hydropower in the region. So here are some of the facts of the Green Industrial Park. It is located in North Kalimantan, and North Kalimantan, being the outermost province of Indonesia, will put this industrial park strategically located for export and import. It has a total area of 16,000 hectares, consisting of two large overlay of area, 11,500 hectares and 4,700 hectares. Such a huge area offers huge potential for power-hungry smelter to consume electricity from hydropower nearby. So hydropower is definitely suitable for this because hydropower is the only renewable energy that can offer firm baseload at high efficiency. It can also be used to firm up intermittency power from other renewable sources such as solar in the region. So we are then very proud and at the same time very, very humble as the President himself groundbreak the development of the Green Industrial Park on December 2021. And approximately a year later, the President again groundbreak the development of Mentarang Induk hydroelectric plants on the March 2023. This shows the strong commitment from the Indonesia government as well as the private sectors towards the renewable energy focused agenda. And we believe that renewable energy is the only way forward for Indonesia. So Mentarang Induk hydroelectric project is essentially the first large-scale sustainable hydropower development developed by PT KSN. It is a 1,375 megawatt project located in Malinau, North Kalimantan, able to produce firm power of approximately 925 megawatt. It is a concrete face rockfill dam with the dam height of 235 meters, easily making it the largest hydropower project in Indonesia and the second tallest CFRD in the whole world. So total estimated cost of the project is $2.6 billion with the first electricity is targeted to be produced in 2030. For those of you here who are interested to know more about the carbon emission of the project, MIHAP carbon emission will be approximately 31 grams CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour, which is less than the 100 grams CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour. Any power plant project with a carbon emission less than the 100 grams CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour will contribute significantly towards the Paris Sustainable Agreement. So for the development of MIHAP, it is by design we want the host area Malinau to gain the most benefits. Here are some of the things that PT KSN has done. Number one, we prioritize hiring from local community. During the construction stage, there will be approximately 5,000 employment opportunities, and during the operation stage, there will be approximately 100 employment opportunities. Local talent will be definitely prioritized for this. And then certain work packages is reserved for local contractors, and we will have some training program for the locals to improve the capacity of the local. And other benefits such as expanding infrastructure development such as road and supporting local tourism agenda. As I mentioned earlier, we want PT KSN to become the Indonesia Sustainable Champion. So we will definitely comply with all the national regulations, such as the one being put forth by the Balai Teknik Bendungan, as well as international standards such as ICOL and the Hydropower Sustainable Assessment Protocol. We will follow best practices to ensure safe and sustainable hydropower development. So now it's almost 5 years since the inception of PT KSN as a company. A lot of hard work, dedication, and persistence have been put in this project. We want to thank for all the government agencies, especially the national government, provincial government, and regency government who have been supportive of this project. So to conclude, as the Chinese proverb says, for a journey of 1,000 miles, it needs a single small step. PTKSN have taken the first small step, and it will be another 7 years before we see the production of our first electricity. I'm happy to announce that we have begun the commencement work of our diversion tunnel last month. So, to conclude, I hope I will be able to share the successful story of the development of 1,375 megawatt project, delivering bulk renewable electricity to the first and largest green industrial estate in Indonesia. Thank you for your kind attention.
Check. Okay. Thank you, Pak Anthony. And I think we understand that you're developing this with all of the, CSR elements, and I guess it will link to the next speaker, as we understand that Debbie, the only acceptable form of hydropower is sustainable hydropower, right? So we'd like to invite you on the stage. Please brief with us on how to ensure the sustainability development of hydropower projects, and a brief introduction about Debbie Gray. Debbie Gray is an interim head of policy at the International Hydropower Association. She leads the IHA work in positioning hydropower as a solution to climate change and manage the GRES program. She is also heading the study on women's representation in hydropower, follows hydropower development in the Americas. Debbie is a professional engineer who has been working for over 25 years in the field of energy and sustainable development. Time is yours, stage is yours. Please give a big round of applause to Debbie Gray.
Thank you very much, Pak Andy, and welcome this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for being here. It's great to see so much interest in hydropower, particularly sustainable hydropower in Indonesia. So just a brief introduction about myself. As was mentioned in the introduction, I'm currently interim head of policy at the International Hydropower Association. So I'm really bringing a sort of global voice to this great conversation that we're having about hydropower in Indonesia and how it can be used to help meet Indonesia's climate change goals. First of all, a couple of words of introduction about the IHA. We are an industry association dedicated to hydropower, of course. We have, it says there are 90 members. We just hit our 100-member mark not too long ago. And our members are stakeholders in the hydropower industry, not just hydropower operators, but also consultants and equipment manufacturers who are dedicated to advancing sustainable hydropower. So our mission, as you can see, is advance sustainable hydropower and also be the global voice of sustainable hydropower. How do we make sure our message gets across is by engaging with global policymakers and financial decision makers, exactly like we've been doing here at COP. I arrived in Dubai 2 days ago, and it seems like I've been here for 10 days already because the past 48 hours have been full of meetings with people like the World Bank and other development banks to try to get across our message that we need more sustainable hydropower for the energy transition. Just a quick look at some of our members around the world and their installed capacity. I'll just go quickly past that. So I guess one of the main messages that I want to bring to this conversation is the world needs more hydropower. Now, some of you in the audience might be thinking, well, of course I'm going to say the world needs more hydropower. I work for the International Hydropower Association. It is my job to promote hydropower. But actually, it's not just the IHA who is saying that. A lot of modeling has been done by international agencies such as IEA, the International Energy Agency, as well as IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. And what they have done is they have modeled the electricity system going into the future according to different scenarios. And what you see here is the keeping global warming to less than 2 degrees scenario. So what you see in the bar on the left is in 2017, you see a certain amount of electricity, and the different colors represent the different forms of generation of electricity. So of course the hydropower is in the dark blue. Then they have projected what needs to change for us to meet the climate goals going into 2050. And if you see the red circle that just came up, that is pointing to hydropower. So there are two things that I really want you to retain from this graph. First of all, as you see, the bar on the left is obviously much smaller than the bar on the right. Why is that? Because if we're going to meet our climate goals, we are going to need to more than double, actually close to triple, the amount of electricity that we need. Why is that? Because electricity going to the future, in order to meet our climate goals, we're going to have to electrify a lot of end uses. And this includes, I'm talking about, for example, transportation, buildings, as well as heavy industry, which currently might use fossil fuels for high heat processes or other parts of their processes. So a lot of those applications are going to have to electrify, and we're seeing it already a lot with electric vehicles, which are more and more prevalent on our roads. So we're going to need more electricity, but we're going to need more low carbon electricity. So now the second most important thing I want you to retain when looking at this graph is look at the size of the blue bar between 2017, or the blue band between 2017 and 2050. That's the hydropower bar. It's kind of hard to see on the scale, but hydropower actually needs to double in the next 25 or so years if we're going to meet climate goals. So think about that. Hydropower has to double. Now, hydropower has been around for 100 years. The country that I am from, Canada, I think it's 60% of our electricity comes from hydropower. And I'm from the province of Quebec, where actually 95% of our electricity comes from hydropower. And across Canada, there are at least 5 hydropower plants that I know of, which are actually 100 years old, and they're still operating today. So that means that if we're going to double, we have to build as much hydropower in the next 25 or 30 years as we've built in the previous 100 years. So that's quite a large task ahead of us. Now, a lot of people think, well, hydropower, that's the old renewable. It's been around forever. We've already chosen the best sites. We've already put in hydropower facilities on the major rivers, which would have hydropower generation potential. That's a misconception, because we did a literature review of all the studies out there looking at where is hydropower potential. And in every single continent, there still is a lot of untapped hydropower potential. However, hydropower, I guess being in one of the older renewables, I work for the Hydropower Association, and I'm going to come right out and admit it. There have been bad hydropower projects done in the past. By bad hydropower projects, I'm talking about projects done 50, 60 years ago, where the notion of sustainable development wasn't as strong as it is today. So these irresponsible hydropower projects are no longer acceptable, and people have demonstrated against them, and I've worked to stop projects even. So what do we need? We need a standard. So I'm going to briefly introduce the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance. The Hydropower Sustainability Alliance was actually just launched exactly 1 month ago today in Indonesia, in Bali, Indonesia, where we had our World Hydropower Congress. But before the launch of the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance, the IHA has been working with stakeholders to develop a lot of sustainability tools. So we've developed sustainability tools. We've developed the standard, which was mentioned earlier, and which I'm going to talk about in a few slides. But this was formally launched into the Sustainability Alliance just 1 month ago today. So what the Alliance does is the custodian of the independent sustainability standard. So as mentioned, hydropower is a bit of a crossroads. And the role that hydropower is going to be playing as we look into the future, it will go from a role where hydropower has mainly been a lot of baseload electricity, but more and more hydropower is going to be required to support the integration of more wind and more solar energy. Now, we all know that wind and solar are great energy forms, but they're also intermittent, which means we need something when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. And we need something to store the excess energy. For example, on a very hot, sunny day, when demand might be very low, solar generation is very high. Well, if we don't have a way of storing that electricity, then that electricity is lost and that energy is lost. Now, a lot of people are really interested about batteries. They're excited about batteries, and actually so am I. However, for the large amount of storage that we need, batteries are simply not going to be enough. However, so we do need more hydropower, but again, irresponsible projects are no longer accessible. So what is the solution? How can an investor who wants to invest in a project tell a good project from a bad one? And how can host communities trust the hydropower developers to do a good job? How can development issues be addressed? And how can our governments be sure that the projects that they're approving are actually good projects? Well, we need a standard. And this is why we have developed the standard. And again, as I mentioned, it was developed, the development of the standard was really pushed by the International Hydropower Association, but we didn't do it alone. It is not people from the community only talking amongst themselves and saying what are good projects. We worked with a number of stakeholders, including some major environmental organizations, as well as development agencies and international financing institutions like the World Bank, as well as governments, to develop this standard. So the standard was actually launched in 2021, and it's already been recognized, like for example, by the climate bonds. The climate bonds, in order to lend money for a project, the project has to have been either certified or at least assessed by the standard, to give one example. Now, what does the standard cover? So the standard looks at the 12 elements which you see here. So I'm not going to go and read them all, but I just wanted to highlight that when we're talking about the sustainability standard, we're not just talking about the environment and fish and biodiversity. That's what a lot of people think of when they think of the impacts of a hydropower plant. It goes beyond that. It looks at cultural heritage, resettlement, local communities, indigenous peoples, for example. So when we're talking about sustainability, it really is all aspects of sustainability. To get a project certified, there's a very transparent process. There are 4 main steps to it. First of all, a power plant has to be audited by independent accredited assessors. Then there's a notion of transparency. Once the auditors have done their job, they produce a preliminary report. The report has to be made available to the host communities as well as to the global community so that they can give their comments. So the reports are put online, but also efforts must be made to have this report available in the local language in a format which is accessible to the local people. Quality, the application has to be submitted to the Secretariat to make sure, who will ensure that the auditing process was done according to the criteria in the standard. And finally, credibility, because of this multi-stakeholder oversight, which is not just the hydropower industry, but really the hydropower industry along with other stakeholders, including environmental groups. So a couple of words about the sustainability standard in Indonesia. So my organization has worked actively with the Ministry of National Development Planning, or also known as Bappenas, for a number of years now, since 2017. And there have been 3 assessments done. First, the Jatiluhur Dam. Second, the Kusan Dam. And then as well, the Mentarang Induk power plant project, which we just heard about by the previous speaker. These are 3 assessments which have been done, but in parallel, we offer training, and we have trained over 100 professionals on the use of the hydropower sustainability standard. And there are 2 provisional accredited assessors from Indonesia. So I would summarize by saying Indonesia is a country which has been very engaged in the conversation about sustainable hydropower, and they're not just talking about it, they're actually putting words to action by having these assessments done, learning from the assessment, working to closing any gaps that are identified in the assessment, as well as training their own local people. I just want to say a word about a topic which was mentioned by Pak Anthony as well, and that is the greenhouse gas emissions from reservoirs. It's probably a lesser known impact of damming a river, that when a river is flooded to create a reservoir, the carbon in the soil can decompose to form either CO2, carbon dioxide, or CH4, which is methane. And so there's been a lot of questions about, well, how much methane is actually being formed, because methane is, of course, a very potent greenhouse gas. So IHA, in partnership with some scientific bodies, and mainly the University of Quebec in Montreal, developed a tool called the GRES tool. So the GRES tool is a simple web-based online tool that you can use to assess the greenhouse gas emissions of your project. And it can be used either on existing projects or on future projects. And Pak Anthony mentioned that the Mentarang power plant will have a greenhouse gas emission footprint of, I think he said 34, 35 grams per kilowatt hour, which is actually quite low. And looking on a life cycle assessment basis, that is roughly the average of hydropower plants around the world, and that is very similar actually with wind or solar when you look at a full life cycle assessment. So if anyone's interested in the GRES tool, learning more about emissions from reservoirs, please come up and see me afterwards. Finally, and this is my last slide, everyone, I want to say a few words about the Bali Statement, because what better location here in Dubai to talk about the Bali Statement than in the Indonesian Pavilion. So the Bali Statement was the result of a consultation process. It was released, of course, in Bali almost exactly 1 month ago today. It was actually 1 month ago tomorrow, to be very precise, because we were hosted by Indonesia for our World Hydropower Congress last month. So I'm very excited because I was just in Bali just last month, and I'm happy to wear the gift that I got while I was in Bali, my batik today. Thank you. So what does the Bali Statement say? The Bali Statement, again, reinforces the need for sustainable hydropower and its necessity in building low carbon technologies, low carbon societies. Sorry, and how do we do this? With 4 recommendations to government, which I'm going to read. The policymakers have to look at planning for future energy needs, because to build a hydropower plant takes a long time, anywhere from 10 to 15 years to include the permitting and the construction. So if we're talking about doubling hydropower in 25 years, we have to start making the decisions today. We're running out of time. Incentivize sustainable hydropower development through financial and market mechanisms. Without going into too much detail, hydropower provides a lot of flexibility to the grid, and a lot of markets today only reward energy. They don't reward the other services which are provided by hydropower, and by changing the market to reward those services, then it will help the development of more hydropower, because today those services, the ancillary services, they're called, are often provided by gas peakers. So if we're trying to get gas out of our electricity mix, we have to incentivize and reward hydropower for the services that it offers. Accelerate the development of new renewable energies through accelerated permitting and licensing. This is not just applicable to hydropower, but to all forms of energy. My colleagues from the Global Wind Council are sharing that sometimes it takes more to permit a wind park than it does to actually construct the wind park. So policymakers have to accelerate that, but without foregoing environmental safeguards. And finally, incorporate the sustainability practices like those that are in the sustainability standard into new projects. Finally, just if anyone's interested more in the Hydropower Association, there's a QR code to our website. If you'd like to get involved, learn more about sustainable hydropower, I'd be happy to speak with you afterwards as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie. Big round of applause to Bu Debbie Gray. Terima kasih. So I guess now we're going to have a Q&A session. And let me start with Pak Anthony. It was mentioned in Debbie's presentation that IHA has done the assessment to Mentarang Induk. Do you mind to share, without disclosing any confidential information, what is the findings and what is the current effort to close the gaps, if any? And do you think it's going to be important? Because I guess now you, as you said in the slide, that you are trying to do the financial closing by end of next year.
So thank you, Pak Andi. So in year 2020, we did manage to get some grant from the Swiss government. So how do we use that money efficiently? Then our board of directors from KSN decided to use that money to do the initial assessment of the hydropower sustainability assessment protocol mentioned by Debbie earlier. So we managed to find 7 gaps. And yeah, we were thankful that we managed to find that gaps early though. So some of the gaps are like the biodiversity, we have not built enough grievance mechanism for the local people. So now we are trying to our very best to close some of the 7 gaps that mentioned. And we were very fortunate, ISA helped us a lot, because otherwise if the banks find that gaps and find out that we are not ready, then it will be quite catastrophic for us, because we plan to do the finance close next year though. So after closing the gaps, we want to get the certification from ISA, and hopefully we can get the gold certificate from ISA. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Anthony. Moving to Debbie, do you mind to share the similarity between your assessment to other, let's say, IFC standard, etc.? I think there are some similarities to that standard, right?
Yes, there are a lot of similarities between our standard and some of the environmental safeguards which have been adopted, for example, by the World Bank or other financing institutions. And we're working right now, in fact, that was part of the meeting we had just yesterday with the World Bank, to try to in order to be more efficient. In other words, what we're trying to put forward is if a hydropower has been certified by the sustainability standard, that would be able to let's say, accelerate the process of approval by a group such as the World Bank. Now, of course, the World Bank is not going to say, oh, yes, we agree with that right away. Of course, the World Bank has to do its own internal assessment to look at how does our standard compare with their own standards. But because our own standard was developed actually with a lot of input from the World Bank, we expect that this process will eventually be very quick. And so, yes, that's what part of what we're doing after we've launched the standard is to try to get it accepted not only by international financing institutions, but I would say in a perfect world by governments to help accelerate the permitting process. Yeah. So we're working to that goal, yes.
Thank you, Devi. Now moving to Pak Muntazar. I'm quite keen to understand further on your flagship project, which is the, PV 200 megawatt peak. It made a lot of headlines, I think, last month. Do you mind to share with us what is the main challenge? Because I guess this is a captive project, 200 megawatt peak, and you said it's 20 megawatt hour battery as well, right? Perhaps you can share with us what is the challenge and effort in this development of the project itself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pak Andi. So I think if this question was asked a decade ago, probably the answer would be different. So I think in the past, when we talk about the renewable energy transition, people always spoke about the trade-off between sustainability and profitability, because at the time, the cost of renewable energy development and also the operationalization, I think, were more expensive than the conventional or the fossil-based fuel. But now I think we are lucky and also grateful because, for example, for the solar, I think now we can afford to generate energy, I think, in less cost in comparison if we use coal or other fossil-based fuels. And I think the challenge, in general, I think I can classify it into technical and non-technical. So in technical perspective, I think we need to prove how the small-scale renewable projects, because I think, probably because this technology is still quite new and many were developed using small investment. They were developed in relatively small size. So let's say like 1 megawatt, 5 megawatt, and 10 megawatt, and etc. While we know that the industrial scale needs more. So we need like 400 megawatts or even a gigawatt of power plant. So in terms of technical perspective, I think we need to prove that the renewable energy alternatives, be it solar or hydropower, are able to meet the industrial demands in terms of energy, and they can provide the energy continuously as well as simultaneously, so there won't be any barrier. We don't need to stop our operations, and we can continue to generate the products such as nickel. And from non-technical perspective, perhaps I think from the regulatory aspect as well. So I think we need more support. I guess to speed up, I think, the administrative and bureaucracy process. So I think since this is quite new, we wanted to develop 200 megawatts peak of solar power. So the regulatory aspect also need to be adjusted, I think, to meet this size, because previously I think the solar farm, many of them were developed in small size. So we need also like faster approval on that one. And also I think because solar, especially if they are developed in the land, then it's also quite land intensive, and we have also issue about land compensation, which is not easy. So I think we need more support from everyone, basically, not just the government, but from other business sectors, local NGOs, I think, to give understanding if this is something that we need to develop our green industrial growth. So I hope that clarifies.
Thank you. My last question to the distinguished speaker before I give it to the floor for the Q&A. To Pak Antony, I seen in one of the slides, actually you have completed the first phase of resettlement, right? Do you mind to share what you've done and, what is the response from the society, from the people actually you relocated at the time?
Okay, thank you, Bandi. So for the development of the Mencarang Induk, there is one villages consisting about approximately 100 people that we need to relocate because it's exactly where our dam is located. So last year we begin the process of relocating them. So we built the new houses, new schools, new infrastructure for them, and so far I think we did some survey asking them that how happy you are after we PTKs and relocate them. So 66% found out that they are very happy. 20% thinks that their lifestyle is generally the same as before, and approximately about 7 to 8% generally feel unhappy. And those who are unhappy because I think they change some of their lifestyle that they cannot do previously. Like for example, they still use the basic toilet necessity. Now we improve with the better toilet conditions and they are not used to the new facilities. So there are some things that we PTKSN need to, I think, do a better jobs in socializing with them. And for those of you who have not followed that, I think 3 months ago that there is the big flood in Malinau, whereby 80% of Malinau is basically flooded though. So those people that we relocate, because we relocate them to a higher grounds, and they are very thankful because we managed to relocate them and they are not affected by the floods. And now 10 other affected communities because of the development of MIHAPs wants us to relocate them as soon as possible though. So we will try to our best that we want to develop this in a very sustainable way, and hopefully once the project started, we can relocate the other of the 10 affected communities. Thank you.
Anthony. Now I'm going to have, give the floor 2 questions. Perhaps if you have any question, you can direct directly to the distinguished speaker. You can raise your hand if you have any question. Yes, please. Please, Pak. Oh, just 1 second. There's microphone over there. Please state your name and your institution.
Sure. Hello. My name is Tommy. I'm from Tony Blair Institute. I have a question to Madam Debbie. You explained 2 things that I'd like to ask. One is where, in light of the climate change, in light of the risks of the hydropower, what are the steps to ensure the supply of water? Like for example, in Indonesia, in some cases, in provinces that rely its electricity on hydro, they experience quite frequent blackouts. So what are the mitigations on that? Second thing is, in your presentation, you mentioned about irresponsible way of, or irresponsible hydropower. What does that mean by that? Thank you.
So I guess there's 2 questions, Debbie. So you're going to take it all, right? Please.
Okay. To answer your first question, I'm actually going to ask for help from my colleagues for the first question. But to answer the first question about flooding and drought, I think last year there were a lot of images of reservoirs going dry, for example, in Europe, and some towns which had been flooded, 50 or 40 or 50 years ago were coming to light. And it's true, hydropower is a resource which depends on, the fuel, you could say, is water. So it's true that in conditions of drought, there will be less. However, less water and therefore less generation. However, the advantage of hydropower with its dams is that it is able to store water in times of drought, of low water. So I understand that, yes, there are times of severe drought where even the water which has been stored is not sufficient. But we have seen, like in other parts of the world, and I'm thinking of California because I'm a bit more familiar with it, even though there has been drought in California, the hydropower potential has been able to, or the generation rather, has been able to stay the same as it has been in the past 5 years average. In other words, just because there's a low water year, it doesn't mean that the lights necessarily go out. Now, I appreciate that you're bringing forth an example of where in one community where the lights do go out, and I have to admit I don't have an exact answer for that, and maybe I'd look to my colleagues who know the Indonesian water patterns, because I believe your water pattern is sort of monsoon and dry region. But I would leave you on that question with the having more water infrastructure is actually protects communities against drought, because coming back to my California example, they were worried about the levels of water in the reservoirs, but those communities which were fed by reservoir did have enough water to supply, like the municipalities, as compared to other communities which were more water stressed. So the water infrastructure actually helps in maintaining water in times of drought. I don't know if one of my colleagues would like to, who knows the rain patterns, would you like to build upon that answer specifically to Indonesia?
So you can go to the second question, Debbie.
Oh, okay. So the second question.
Responsible hydropower.
So
What does it mean?
responsible actually sustainable hydropower was is what we call our standard. So I had a slide which had like 12 points that we look at in the sustainability standard. But basically, sustainable hydropower is one where the impacts on both the local communities and on the surrounding environment are minimized. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that hydropower can have zero impacts, but frankly, no form of electricity has zero impact. For example, a windmill, has to take balsa wood, which is now being so much stressed in South America, for example. If you look at a whole life cycle, every single form of energy that we use, be it gas or solar or wind, or hydro, is going to have a life cycle impact. In other words, I'm not going to sit here and say we can do hydropower with zero impact. But what I am trying to say is by responsible hydropower, sustainable hydropower, we can build hydropower plants which minimizes the impact on the local communities. And one of the real key, and the local environment, and one of the keys to doing that, I would say, is to involve local communities at the outset. And that is something that the hydropower community globally did not do in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, when a lot of big projects were developed. For example, on my continent, the developer kind of came in and said to a community, we're putting a hydropower dam here and you're going to have to move, and I'm sorry, and maybe here's a few $1,000s for your troubles. That's not the way to do a hydropower project. So a responsible hydropower project is one where you involve the local communities from the outset and you help determine what are the best conditions also for installing the hydropower. Like, for example, again, my example is Canadian, but we use local indigenous knowledge about rainfall patterns to help inform where exactly should we put the dam, or when designing our mitigation measures, like, for example, to have an environmental flow, we depended a lot on the local indigenous knowledge to better understand the flow patterns of the river and what was important, for example, for spawning of the fish. So by involving the local communities from the outset, you design a better project, and that makes sense as a win-win-win, because it makes sense for the developers as well, because if you design a project and it's not good, and then the communities are out either at a place like COP or in the local communities protesting against it, that is going to cost you a lot of money, and it might actually block your project in the long run.
Thank you, Debbie. Before I invite Pak Rahmat to the stage, short closing statement from each of you. Pak Mutasar, perhaps you can start with your closing statement.
Yeah. So from us, I think it's quite similar with what Pa Antony and Bu Debbie mentioned earlier. So as a nickel producer, for us, there is no way to produce nickel except to produce it responsibly. And in order to produce it responsibly, we certainly cannot do that alone. We are miners, we are nickel manufacturers, so we are not renewable energy experts, and we are also not, let's say, the most excellent social people as well. So we certainly will need a lot of hands to ensure that our nickel production can be done in a sustainable and responsible manner. And here, I think, in this COP opportunity, we would like to invite everyone, I think, from the finance sector, from the NGOs, academic, to support our efforts. And yeah, I think together we can make our dreams come true. Thank you.
Big round of applause to Pak Mutasar. Debbie, your turn, Debbie, closing statement.
So my closing words would be, we are going to need more hydropower if we're going to meet our climate change goals. Why? Because hydropower provides strong baseload as well. With its storage capacity, it helps the integration of other renewables like wind and like solar. However, going forward, the only acceptable hydropower is sustainable hydropower, and now we have a great tool by which we can measure that, and that is the hydropower sustainability standard.
Another big round of applause to Debbie. Last but not least, Pak Antony.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short. So I think this is definitely the biggest COP event in the history of COP, though. So us attending this COP event does not tick the climate box for the year, though. We need to turn the commitment into real action, though. The badges that we wear here today is our shared responsibility that we need to deliver the climate action back our respective home nation, though. So for us, KSN, we want to continue the development of Pentarang Induk in a safe and responsible way. Thank you.
Tepuk tangan untuk Pak Antony. Now I'd like to invite Bapak Rahmat Khaimuddin, the Deputy Coordinating Minister for Infrastructure and Transportation at the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime and Investment Affairs, to give some closing remarks. Please, state as yours, Pak Rahmat. Tepuk tangan untuk Pak Rahmat.
Thank you so much for attending the session and all the wonderful panelists. It's not much I can say, probably with a little addition from the government point of view. I think what we want to do in Indonesia is to improve our economy by industrialization. And what we want to do is industrialize by doing value added to our natural resources. That requires power. And that requires power that is reliable and price competitive and sustainable. Because if you want to build smelters that are going to be used for battery materials, it makes sense. If it's low carbon, it is sustainable because it will be used in the green value chain. So we commend everything that this gentleman and ladies has done. I'm very grateful that not only there is an association on hydro that recognize the limitation of the variable renewable energy, but is also pushing to build more and more dispatchable, like the IHA. And I'm also very grateful to see that there is an effort, global effort, to improve the standard. Because otherwise people will say, oh, hydro good, not good. If now that we have one standard, it's actually will be better. So I think hopefully we all learn something today, like I do. And let's make this effort, as Pak Andri said, we can execute once we are back home. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Rahmat. You please stay on the stage, Pak Rahmat. We're going to have a photo session together with all the distinguished speakers. And now, again, please, big round of applause to everyone here. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.